Welcome to another episode of The Fire These Times, a podcast working to uplift internationalist dialogues on human rights, climate change, and visions of a bold future. We're part of the FTP Media Collective, and if you'd like to support us, you can do so by either subscribing on Apple Podcasts or heading out to our Patreon at patreon.com/fromtheperiphery to get early access to all the FTP podcasts, as well as exclusive content and an invitation to join our monthly hangout. Today, we are joined by Lateef Johar Baloch, a human rights advocate and member of the Human Rights Council of Balochistan. Joining us today is also Alaya, our producer.
Hi, yeah. So we have a very special episode today on the Friday Times because we've never done an episode on Balochistan before. We're very grateful to have Johar join us today. Maybe we can start with just some basic intros. Harry, you've been on once, but it's been a while. But let's start maybe with Johar. If you can introduce yourself, however you feel most comfortable, and Harry, then you can do so as well. And we can start our conversation.
Thank you so much. My name is Lateef Johar Baloch. I'm from Balochistan. I live in exile in Toronto, Canada, since September 2015. So I left Balochistan because of my student activism back home. I was part of Baloch student organization, which was banned by Pakistani regime, and the military started a bloody crackdown against overall in Balochistan against the politicians, political parties, activists. But BSO was BSO was the main target for many reasons, because BSO was changing BSO was changing the society, but BSO was challenging Pakistan's narrative, Pakistan's policies regarding Balochistan. Not only Balochistan, they were doing it with other marginalized groups, but Balochistan always been in the front to fight Pakistani state's narrative and violent activities, particularly misusing Islam against ethno-cultural people in the region. So the Pakistani government started abducting and killing our friends. So it was not safe for me to stay there because lots of my friends were abducted and killed. So my health was not good because I did a hunger strike for 46 days to highlight the missing persons issue. So that's why I had to leave, thanks to some friends in Canada and back home and other region of the world for their help. So,
okay, thanks for that, Johar.
And I'll introduce myself real quick.
Yeah.
My name is Prasad. I'm a researcher working on the Middle East and South Asia, based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. I tend to work on a lot of security-related issues, which coincidentally enough has brought me into a lot of human rights discussions, whether it be on Palestine, Syria, Balochistan, Kashmir, and all that stuff. So, and I'm happy. Thank you, Alaya, for giving us the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, I'll be helping out this conversation as much as I can, but of the three of us, I'm definitely the least knowledgeable here, so I'll do my best, and hopefully I will reflect the audience, which I think, based on the demographics that we can somehow guess from the statistics, would, if they know about Balochistan, they may know some of the headlines, but not as in depth as I think the topic deserves. Recently, Johar, you co-wrote a piece in which you wrote, here I'm quoting, Baloch political organizations and armed insurgents declare Pakistan's military violence and oppressive policies as an attack on their dignity, culture, and a violation of their fundamental rights. Here, end quote. I guess this is, given that it's very much an ongoing situation, maybe we can start with some context for folks who don't know much about what's happening, maybe even where is Balochistan, really some of the. You don't have to do the Wikipedia entry level things, because people can do their own research on that and you don't have to spend too much time on it. But what can you tell us a bit about the situation when you talk to people who don't know as much?
Yeah, in terms of Balochistan's geography, Balochistan used to be separate completely from subcontinent India before British went there and occupied India, and also tried to occupy Afghanistan. So that was the reason Balochistan used to be part of Middle East, and still Baloch people consider themselves geographically part of Middle East, not part of South Asia. But then because of this administrative division and British did divide Balochistan, Afghanistan in 19th centuries. And so when they were trying to go to Afghanistan, they attempted to use the Bolan Pass as the only pass they can go to Afghanistan. So that's why there was a conflict between, at that time there was a king, Mehra Khan. So there was some conflict between British troops and British administration and Baloch tribes. So then, Baloch, of course, they killed the king in 1839. So then after that, they divide. They're in line. Everyone knows about it, probably in academic world. And they divide Afghanistan, Balochistan. They bring some Afghan land to British Balochistan in India included. And then in 1928, they gave an entire part of Balochistan to Iran. It's now called Sistan and Balochistan, but culturally, linguistically, they're same people. They have a language called Balochi, and they have their land is called Balochistan, which means land of Baloch. And then, of course, whatever happening between during this time till 1947, while British was leaving, and they decided to divide India, create Pakistan. So there was also a discussion about Balochistan, and Balochistan's people were also asking for their own sovereignty. So that's where, and then of course the Pakistan's so-called founder, I can say it, because he didn't have any idea or any wish to create a separate state, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. But at the end, he had no choice. And then, of course, he has no power after when British created Pakistan. So that's the current movement is still going on today. It started from there after Pakistani military invaded Kalat in 1948. So, yeah, it's really interesting. It's a very beautiful region. In terms of geography, in terms of landscape, you can have we have 4 seasons in the year, and we have rivers, we have of course it's a mountainous region, and we have plain land. We have all types of fruits and vegetables, and people are so friendly, and they're kind of socialistic kind of approach of living, helping each other, contributing each other. Of course, it's been a tribal society, nomad society. Now things are changing because the world is changing. So unfortunately, the war and suppression stop all this beauty to come out. And also the sad thing is the suffering of people to come out because of the media restrictions and reporting restriction and Balochistan imposed by the Pakistani government.
Just to pick up on that a little bit, because I think especially when you talk about the part of Balochistan claimed by Pakistan, where you're from, I think going back to 1948 and talking about when they annexed the Kingdom of Kalat, I think is an important point. I think that from my understanding, that's what really set off the movement. Because one, Balochistan never wanted to be part of either India or Pakistan, and how that's kind of shaped. So can you maybe start talking to us about the Baloch movement from independence, starting from the annexation of Kalat, was a very big part of the Baloch story, as we know.
Yeah, unfortunately, Balochistan's history and also the movement's history after the occupation and after the 1948 is somehow some people wrote about it and in the beginning, but now since last 3 decades, it's more clear for us, and because now we are seeing it our own and we are writing about it, we are suffering from what's happening in Balochistan. But the Balochistan's nature has always been independent. Baloch people's nature has always been independent. They never accepted any invader, any foreigners to rule them. Of course, the foreigners, particularly the British, divided Balochistan into... Of course, Balochistan already had an existing tribal system, and that tribal system was based on choosing someone to deal with the social issues. And there were different level of tribal systems, like village level, regional level, then the central level kind of Sardar or whatever they call it. So British utilized this in a negative way. They just empowered these Sardar. Many cases, they created their own Sardar. They brought their own tribal chiefs to just.
Could you tell us what Sardar is, just for people who don't know?
Oh, Sardar is a kind of tribal chief. Is a tribal chief. They basically people historically people choose someone from the village or from the region to be their representative, and then the Sardars or whatever the rule. So not kind of like a formal ruling thing. It was more social, trust based, and support based, but that was exploited by British. They've given them now it's from that time when British divided Baloch people. Of course, you guys know that divide and rule policy of British. Balochistan affected by it as well. So now, since last 100 years, if you were chosen to be the Sardar, it's still your son must be the Sardar if you died or if someone else come. And Pakistan couldn't stop using the British system or ideas or policies, but increase using them and manipulating in a more negative and harsh way. So, yeah, sorry, I went deep into the tribal system, but political. First time, if I can say, Baloch had a political sense or political organizing was in 1920s. It started by Yusuf Aziz Magasi and Abdulaziz Kurd. And so that time, of course, there were the political discourse was about mostly influenced by USSR, socialism or these kind of things. British was kind of a foreigner for the people in the region. And also, so that's why they come up with idea to fight. The first thing they did, they wanted to fight the British tribal system they created to influence, to divide Baloch people, to rule them. So after that, of course, political maturity, you can say, or political power always been just in a starting position. But when it comes to 1946 or 45, 47, so this is the moment when Baloch people were discussing with each other, and they have some discussion with British, and also there was a still agreement in 1946 where British, Pakistan, and Balochistan sit down, and then they decided on Balochistan's sovereign status. So then in 1947, on 11th August, Balochistan announced its own independence, and they have two parliaments, and there were political party discussions, but after the division of India and creation of Pakistan, the Pakistani regime at that time was a Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Of course, everything was controlled by Punjabi military and Punjabi bureaucrats, and that still controlled the entire state, policies and programs and separation of marginalized communities. So from where they started asking the Balochistan's people, and particularly pressurizing Khan Kalat at the time, to join Pakistan, because they were arguing that, we are also Muslim and you are a Muslim, we should be one state. But there was an argument particularly by Gosbus Bizenjo, one of the only, you can say, political mind was there that time. So he denied. He said, if because we are Muslim to join Pakistan, then why Afghanistan, Iran, other region don't join that? But that was not, Pakistan was not happy. Of course, Punjab was not happy. Then they attacked the Kalat palace, arrested the Khan in 1948. Since then, the first armed resistance started by Khan's brother, Abdul Karim.
So I think just to provide a little bit context when he talks about Punjab. So there's five main provinces within Pakistan: Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, Azad Kashmir, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. But Punjab, I believe, is the majority. I think it's the majority population, 50+%. They are heavily represented in the military. They're heavily represented in the government. And I think Lateef, you could talk a little bit more about this when talking about the current day movement. But not just among Baloch, but like among a lot of different ethnic groups, there's like a complaint that Punjab essentially rules everything, especially Balochistan being a very resource-rich region, is less used for the Baloch people, but used to like serve the people in Punjab instead. So like that. But yeah, when you talk about that, because I guess the current, usually the roots of the current movement, I know like we can trace back to 1948, but usually they give, I believe, 2005, 2006 as the like instigate and like the kind of instigating factor, right? In terms of the armed movement today. So maybe we could talk about like, especially what is like the movement like today? What's been like the main things that you people have been dealing with, as well as like maybe even changes from the movement? Because you mentioned the Sardars, which used to play a big role, but how there's like even like a split between like Baloch people and Sardars nowadays.
Yeah, this basically the current movement didn't started like 2005 or since 21st century. Its roots goes to if someone asks me from my own experiences, learnings, and my own perspective, I think that its roots goes to 1967 when the first time BSO was formed, like established in a formal way. So of course that time was still there was some influence by Sardars as well, but that was the foundation. It was the so since then BSO has been politically extremely active and politically educating Balochistan's people. If there was no BSO and its educational programs, not formal educational, like informal, like kind of like a revolutionary literature gatherings, public awareness, we might not have this position today. So of course, between this time, then comes 1930s, 1970s, where the Balochistan has its first so-called government, provincial government. Ataullah Mengal was chief minister, and then he was kicked out. Then the armed movement again started, and then of course Pakistani government, particularly Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, at the prime minister at the time, he divided Baloch society, not only particularly Baloch students. He tried to create some sense that he was against the Sardars, but he was using this for his own interests. He was always against Baloch and Pashtun. That's true. Like Bhutto was always against, but after that, of course, the current movement was initially known for armed resistance. From my understanding, talking to some people, they already been involved in this. Then they started preparation for armed struggle in 90s. And then in 2000, and after everything's changed from when Dr. Al-Nizar come out and says he was also part of Dr. Malik. He's also pro-Pakistan parliamentarian politician. And he was part of his student organization. But then he realized that, there's nothing. These parliamentarians are just cheating with their people. And there's nothing for Baloch people. So then he came out with lots of friends and established BSO Azad. Azad means free. And then from there, things start changing. People say, Balochistan, mostly young people said, like, yeah, there's nothing for us in Pakistan's federation. We have to have our own independence. Clear idea, clear demand. It started from there. So, of course, then Al-Nizar was abducted, and his friends were abducted along with him in 2005. And that time he was not part of BSO. He already left the BSO. But after that, when he come back, after months of tortures and brutalities he faced inside Pakistan Army, Pakistan Intelligence Agency, particularly ISI dungeons. So then, of course, he openly went to mountain, started an organization called Balochistan Liberation Front. During this time, also BSO Azad was very active all over the Balochistan. BSO has been always active in the region. Like even in 80s, there was no transportation. It's still not good transportation in Balochistan. There was no transportation, and there was no telephone facilities. Like historian or the people that were already active that time, they're still alive. They can say that around like hundreds of thousands of people joined their session, council session in Quetta in 80s. So it's a big thing for Baloch students. So, but But 2005, then of course Pakistan military General Pervez Musharraf killed Nawab Akbar Bhutto. He was a former governor and chief minister of Balochistan. In 80s, he was also not a pro-independence person, and he was also used by Bhutto and some people argue by the military. But he was not, of course, genuinely Pakistani. Of course, he has always had like no Baloch is genuinely Pakistani. But there was some kind of probably the tribal system also hurt us because there were like lots of conflict between chiefs and different kind of challenges, and still Pakistan using them. But yes, since I joined the BSO and to not join formally, but I come to start going to their events in 2005. But in 2008, then I became a member. In 2009, I became president of Awaran region, where is a district where I'm from in Balochistan. It's heavily militarized. I think it's one of the like a titan militarized region because Dr. Al-Nizar is from there, and lots of other political leaders were from there. Dr. Manan Baloch, he was killed later in 2000, I believe, I forgot, in 2016. So this movement is completely different because it's now recently, a few years ago, I think last year or 2 years ago, that's completely, particularly because armed struggle has always been in Balochistan, not only since 1948, but before that. But Baloch people never put their arms down because of their situation, and there have been already challenges and conflict within them. But when it comes to the foreigners invading or like looting their resources, they always fight them. So this time the movement is completely in the hands of ordinary Baloch. And people say middle class. This is not a big middle class in Balochistan because it's very poor society in terms of economy, financial, and these kind of things. But yeah, educated. They educated themselves through informal education. And I cannot say like educated about scientific world or science and everything, but still they are quite... there are lots of people there still trying to educate themselves. Now, of course, everything is available about everything in the world. So, and of course, recently now it's completely, I cannot say completely, but almost freed itself from even like older generation of politicians. Either they are in armed struggle or in political. So that's a really big hope, and now they are more structured and more strong and unit. You can see a huge unity among them, particularly even within their senior level. From my own experiences, I might be wrong. There might still be some doubts, some the ego because we are tribal people not coming together. But the younger people, you can see even from their party leadership, you cannot see anything coming up. But from lower level, not lower level, second level leadership, or like they are at the front of campaigns, at the front of fighting, they support each other. Now the party line, or particularly since the Baloch Yagehti Committee emerged since last year, so it's a big hope, it's a big change.
So yeah, I think that actually segues into a couple of different sections, because you mentioned the Baloch Yagehti Committee. I might be mispronouncing that, my apologies, but because I know, like, especially one thing I think like a lot of people in South Asia have been seeing has been these like long marches led by like most particularly Maharang and Samidin Baloch. And I think especially one of the issues that you mentioned, as well as like what they've mentioned in these marches, is the issue of enforced disappearances. So can you talk, especially because I know you've had some like experiences with that, and we're talking about not just enforced disappearances, but the repression by Pakistani authorities in general. So could you maybe talk a little bit more, especially how you got what's happening today in Balochistan?
So repression is in Balochistan. Even I'm from there, I lost lots of friends. I sighed in my eyes. I might still cannot explain it in a way it deserved to be explained, it deserved to be known. Because there are many reasons. Because one thing is, it's like the suppression is like has no limit in Balochistan. It is Pakistan military attacking every aspect of life in Balochistan and every area in Balochistan. You are like, people are not allowed to even buy medicine without. In some areas, particularly where I'm from, in Balochistan, in Awaran and Mashke, and many areas in Makran and Sarawan, where the armed resistance forces are fighting against Pakistan military. So if you go to buy a medicine, and if you're living in mountain, you have to explain who you are buying them for. But now, of course, the entire population were living in, even like, I've been to those villages, and my own family member were living in mountain in Awaran region, and hundreds of other small villages, because they were family villages, like they're all relative. They've been living there. They have like their livestock, and their source of income is like cutting maybe trees and woods, and also growing goats and sheep and selling them. They all are forced to leave those regions to go live in small towns without any help. And Pakistan military journals can invade military journals, of course, under the military journals policies and order. Pakistan military, particularly Frontier Corps, FC, so paramilitary forces of Pakistan Army. They now, of course, Army itself is in Balochistan for last few years, but the beginning was FC, and they invade any house they want. They call any person they want. They attack anything they want. They burn down houses. They also did with my parents' house. They burned it down. They took everything was valuable, even small blankets. My father used to be a labor in Dubai. That time he bought some blankets, and it was a big thing for us. They all are gone. Whatever they could take, they took, and whatever not, then they burnt them to ashes. And also, they attack your dignity. Well, that's why I was saying like they attack your dignity. Dignity is like, because you have no privacy in Balochistan. They trace your phones. They have informers. They know about you, about everything. When you are getting married, how many kids you have, who belong to whom, and they have cameras installed in many areas, to even in washrooms of girls in schools. For many reasons, they use them. First thing, of course, the informer they have, of course, they're criminals, right? Not a normal person can do these things against humanity, particularly against their own people. They're criminal. They nurture them. They create them. Drug mafia, sectarian terrorists. And then, of course, they allow them to do whatever they want. They're like thugs, thieves. They can go abduct people. They can abduct people for ransom. They can put cameras in girls' washroom to blackmail them because of their sexual desires, to make them to force them to have these kind of crimes. So in this situation, even I cannot talk to my father and my mother. There was a point my father was saying, "Do not call us," because I'm giving my example because I know it. I'm suffering it. I'm experiencing it. There are hundreds and thousands of people that are suffering that way. And the other thing is, that's how this movement is going on in Balochistan. That's why Balochistan's people now see no other point and other other way to save themselves. It's a survival matter for Balochistan's people. It is more than survival, because our language was attacked. Our language programs are not allowed. Our linguistics are abducted and killed. Our intellectuals are abducted and killed. And our entire society, entire culture is being converted to extremism. Like with the state power, with military power, with different tactics, and using, as I was saying before, misusing Islam, and creating friction between our society, within our society. So this movement that's why like BSO was a change I was saying that time. So countering these things, that's why the past, of course, the tribal chiefs at the time, there were three names of tribal chiefs like Herbashmari, Ataullah Mengal, and Akbar Khan Bukti. After them, they all are gone now. So now the entire movement in the hand of ordinary Baloch. So that's why the primary targets are the leaders from the ordinary Baloch society. So they started with the BSO from abducting Zakir Majid Baloch in 2009. He was the senior vice president of BSO Azad. They killed Kambar Chakar, also BSO, was a leader of BSO Azad, Comrade Qayyum, Shafi Baloch, and then, of course, top level BNM, Baloch National Movement's leader, Ghulam Muhammad Baloch in 2009. It all happened again. This repression against Balochistan always increased with the People's Party, Pakistan People's Party coming to the power. In the beginning was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 70s. And in 2009, after General Pervez Musharraf's rule dictatorship, then Zardari came. And Zardari agreed to everything to the Pakistan's establishment, Pakistan's army, particularly Punjabi establishment, journals, to do whatever in Balochistan they can, but he need to be in power. So now, of course, it's now his son, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and he is doing worse because now his father, of course, still doing everything, but he is the face. He brought lots of drug dealers, head up the death squad, like Sarfraz Bukti, and they're using them. And they're so that's why, of course, thousands of people are abducted and thousands are killed, and it's still going on. But now people see these brutalities is just these brutalities are also part of their unfortunately they're lack of their sovereignty and violation of their sovereignty and dignity. So that's why they were if we are suffering at that level, so we have to continue it until we go to an end and we became sovereign.
There's a lot that we can unpack there, and so I might just ask a couple of different questions because Beshi, you mentioned the Pakistan People's Party, and then we talked about this when we last saw each other that in some ways it's a little bit more awareness among Pakistanis nowadays of the problem of enforced disappearances, primarily because it's happening to the Imran Khan's party or members of Imran Khan's party. So and just to kind of put out some of the Pakistani narratives is we know maybe what the military is doing in Balochistan is not good, but what we need to do is get rid of the greedy Sardars that are holding the Baloch people back, that ultimately armed violent, the Baloch armed movement are killing civilians, or that this is, or more popular, one of the more popular things, this is sponsored by India, this is not actually a popular idea within Balochistan, and it's well, the rest of Pakistan is kind of going through this. We see this with Imran Khan, we see this with Pashtuns, but they're not necessarily asking for independence. So how do you kind of respond to these things of well, other parts of Pakistan are going through this, or why do the Baloch need independence?
No, if someone asks me, and if there's someone they have already knowledge of Balochistan, what's happening, they've been focusing on for last decade, I think it's what is happening to Imran Khan, what is happening in Punjab, is even not close to what's happening in Balochistan. Not close. I can say 1 or 2% not close. Balochistan situation is, as I was explaining before, of course, now the world is changing because in Punjab, particularly Punjabi military journal, there's a group now became a family, a ruling class. They want to control everything. And also the one family, so-called elites, politicians, they call themselves Nawaz Sharif and some Chaudhries. Of course, now the middle class and the educated class, and they do not like it. They want to have a power. And of course, bureaucracy has always been in the hand of a middle class. In Punjab, they have been contributing against Baloch people, against Pashtun people, even against in Sindh. But of course, of Sindh, Punjabi, of course, Sindh's elites like Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and some other Wateras and powerful families have the ruling of the state. They can rule. They're ruling the state, but the general ordinary public is also suffering. So, of course, they're fighting now against these things. And but in terms of Balochistan, I think it's even not close. And you cannot find any there are few, of course, Pakistan Army always been afraid of knowledge, even stopping, it's like Punjab's people not to know what's happening in Balochistan. But social media changed it. Now lots of Punjab, people from Punjab, academics. I have good friends, they're from Punjab, academics, journalists, and activists. So they came to know, I think, about Balochistan issues since 2014, when Voice for Baloch Missing Persons started a long march from Quetta to Karachi and Karachi to Islamabad. Sami Baloch was part of it as well. Then, of course, we did Biso Azad did a hunger strike in Karachi Press Club. From there, now social media was helping us to spread the word around the world, and also within Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Sindh. So that started changing, and still you cannot find any mass graves in Punjab, any torture bodies and killing of young people, educated people in front of their parents, and in dozens. So it's. I don't think it's. Of course, there are lots of injustices within Punjab, and now, but the Punjabi, particularly elites and bureaucrats, are extremely well up, but also beneficiaries of what's Pakistan military doing in Balochistan, particularly in terms of destruction and exploitation of Balochistan natural resources. Let's say the first time Punjab and Pakistani state started exploiting was the natural gas and Sui in 1970. They discovered it in 1954, but in 60s they started supplying to different industry, and also whatever they're doing with the environment, with the health, with the land, with the resources, the benefits are going to Punjab. Particularly, it's not directly through state policy, through so-called federalism or state, but lots of companies, the state-owned companies, state-owned businesses, they're from Punjab and other elites in particularly Sindh. So it means Balochistan is Balochistan's suffering has been benefiting those people. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying every Punjabi or every person from Punjab, because there are also people there, ordinary people. They've been sufferers. Their lands have been taken by Pakistan Army. They don't allow to practice their religion. They don't allowed to do their business freely. So, but yeah, I think it would be probably people said they've never been there. And of course, yes, Pakhtunkhwa, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pashtun people themselves, they don't call it Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They said it's Pakhtunkhwa, it's our land. And I have to say it because, of course, I also believe it's their land and historical land, and they have right to self-determination. They have been brutally, their culture particularly, have been brutally attacked by Pakistani state, particularly with misusing Islam and religion, creating extremists, and they destroy their culture, peace, and they, of course, the state controlled by Punjabi military and bureaucrats and elites. They get lots of donors, money, funds from international community, particularly US, to fight these. They created them and to fight them, and then without asking the local. Of course, I'm not saying that there are lots of elites in Pashtun community. They are also contributing to the suffering of their people. So yeah, this is different. But right now, especially in some areas, in Pakhtunkhwa, like they call it Sparta, federally administrative. I don't know what's the full thing. So they were affected a lot, and they're still affected. Now Pakistan military again trying to do this, but now people are aware. Like Mansoor Pashtun is a very energetic and had some good ideas and some good clear demands from the state to stop these things. So it's a big hope, and they also have. They're making connection with each other, like Pashtun activists with Baloch activists. Unfortunately, we cannot see it in other regions, particularly Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir. Of course, Kashmir has been suffering a lot since 1947. Both sides, they call it like Azad Kashmir and occupied Kashmir, but I don't think any Kashmir is Azad, like free. So if they come to whatever the Baloch people are doing, or somehow Pashtun people are doing now, if there's a movement in Sindh, with the ordinary people, and also Balochistan. So I think Pakistan Army is not ready for big public uprising, because they always used power and violence to silence people individually, but collectively Pakistan Army never faced any public movement like we have now.
I know, Eli, you might have a question. Just to add a little note for our listeners, when you talk about Manzoor Pasteen, he's one of the main leaders of the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which is like a nonviolent movement that's been pushing for Pashtun rights, especially after like the years of the war on terror and like the Afghan jihad of abusing tech. But I'll give it to you, Elia.
Yeah. I think first of all, thanks a lot, Johar. This is like, you can clearly get a sense that while it is a complex situation, you're really able to present it in terms that I personally find pretty clear. And there seems to be at least an underlying logic. If we want to extend you're mentioning the role of elites, obviously the role of the government. And if we can expand this slightly, I'm curious about what are the roles of what is the role or the roles of international actors we do here. I mean, in my circles, let's say, I'm more focused on environmental issues at times, and so I hear about extractivist stuff and mining and all of that, and the role of whether it's China, the US, or whatever it might be. What can you tell us about this? And can it, or more specifically, also, like, what is the role of these actors in making it more difficult for Balochi activists to get the word out, if that makes sense?
Unfortunately, international actors, when we talk about our region, the one name came immediately in our mind is the US. And generally, since last decade, the few decades, US has been dominant in internationally, particularly in our region. And so the US contribution to the region has been really, really destructive. Really destructive in terms of its own interest and desire to be the hegemonic power in the world, particularly when they started against USSR in Afghanistan. And they, of course, then they spent trillions or billions of dollars to fight them. But initially they started US agencies, CIA and Pakistani militaries started projects like Talibanization to counter USSR, and then of course later they started fighting against them. And the destructive side of it was like Pakistan military used US ads, US programs such as war on terror, and not only to create further sectarian terrorists and funding them, sheltering them, but also counter ethno-cultural aspects of the region, particularly attacking the language aspect, attacking the progressive students, activists, leaders, politicians in Balochistan, particularly. In 80s, they started like a program like creating thousands of madrasas. They call it's Arabic word for school, like for religious education. It was not like a religious education. They were going to make you a religious scholar based on the facts, based on the history, but they were like a create extremist, like suicide attackers, and they created. And so the reason behind this for the Punjabi establishment was to counter ethno-cultural politics, ethno-cultural sense of Balochistan's people, and linguistic identity, and their sovereign title to their land. And that was, I cannot say that US didn't know this. I cannot say that NATO states didn't know this. They knew this, but the Pakistan army has always been cheating, and they always having their own interests. They know like where US need them, and where the other world need them. They negotiated the suffering of Balochistan people, the suffering of Pashtun people, and making them silence, making them not to talk, but they do whatever the US want. So it's still happening. Now, of course, people are aware. And in terms of international community, of course, China doesn't care about it. China is trying to replace everything. And China and of course, other international community, if we talk about Japan and some other state, they're not into these kind of issues. They go whatever US want, and they also have their own interests against China. European Union somehow it seems like they have more principles for human rights and everything, but they cannot do it. In terms of our region, they're still dealing with whatever Pakistan army setup is in Pakistan, particularly in Balochistan. And international organization, because I can say about them because I've been involved reporting to the UN, other human rights organizations, they have no power. They have no power, and they have no structure or program to particularly report human rights violation. Other institutions like World Bank and IMF, whatever, they do some social program, they fund some NGOs, they collect some data. Those data is even not produced to the media in a way that they show how much suffering, how much people are suffering in the region. And they just then, of course, use it for funding and everything. And I've been trying to reach out to these organizations since I came to Canada. It's a really complicated mechanism. It's a really expensive mechanism. It's not for the journal people, particularly people from the region like mine. We don't understand their language. We don't understand their mechanism, procedures, and it's not easy. Even if you're a lawyer, you study in a Western university, you still have to struggle with them. And they're very slow. And they have, despite all of this, Balochistan's activists, Balochistan's people, and people particularly living in diaspora, they did day and night to collect data and submit to them. There are like hundreds of cases of missing persons submitted to the UN. And I myself reach out to different committees. They have the data to at least issue a statement, but they're still not doing it. And Pakistan state and government cashing on that. And media is not allowed to go to Balochistan. Human rights organizations are not allowed to go to Balochistan. Local human rights organization, activists, and journalists are crossed, abducted, and killed. And foreigners, I know many journalists, and they live in the West and they're Western. They told me they tried to go to Balochistan. They're not, they didn't get the visa. They were not allowed. If someone goes to, as someone is allowed, then they have to go to with the Pakistan military. And then the Pakistan military has to explain Balochistan's situation, the people they're dealing with, the journalists. Even outlets like BBC World, they're supposed to be doing they did some good reporting on Balochistan. There are some reports that are completely relying on Pakistan military. And the other side, the international community, and community is too wide and too huge. Obviously, like those states that have interest in the region, they're also benefiting from this situation. Let's say the Canadian mining corporation, Barrick Gold, it's doing the same as the Chinese corporation are doing there. And we don't know, we still don't know what is the agreement, what is in it, who decide this destruction of the natural resources, how they are funding that, where this money is going. And even we will talk later about the region, one of the worst affected region because of these minings in the Chagi district. And we still don't know like how they're going to protect the water, who they are hiring. And on top of that, they are militarizing because these projects, Pakistan Army and government particularly recently, they announced further military deployment in the region in Chagi district to protect Barrick Gold. And this militarization is the primary concern of Balochistan's people, primary source of brutalization of Balochistan's people, and the primary thing or source Balochistan's people want to end and want to get away from Balochistan. And they are benefiting from this. This is really deep. Even I believe US knows everything. Of course, you guys also know that US agencies knows everything. They have more access to information. They are inside the Pakistani government. They are inside the Pakistani military, but they're not saying it. But now the people know. They're trying to. But when you see their statements and speeches, you feel like, oh, they are changing the world into a democratic heaven. But it's not true. They can do it. They can stop Pakistan army. But they don't believe in public power. They create easy powers. They create easy dictators because they can agree with them easily, cheaply.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems that there's essentially an interest in just not talking about it. Like, even if they do have some data, even if they do have some information, not to share that with the world in order to kind of the classical, like, as long as you don't know what's happening there, we can exploit the resources easily, I suppose. That's how I'm reading it anyway.
Yes, of course. If one person is controlling a thing, like a source or like an issue, and that person is not a local, that person doesn't have any belonging to the region, doesn't have any feeling for the region, doesn't have any family in the region, that person or entity also is something or someone. They have their own interest of exploitation, have their own benefits from doing this. So they can do whatever they want cheaply. Let's say right now, if you see the Punjab, the Pakistani government, federal government's cabinet, it's Punjab. In Pakistan military, it's Punjab. Even in Balochistan, all high-level positions in military and civilian are Punjab and controlled by Punjabi. And so they can do it easily. And of course, but now time has changed and people don't like it, no matter how that the US is powerful or China is powerful. But when it comes to a survival point, or when it comes to their dignity, and when it comes to their children, when it comes to their environment, when it comes to their livelihood, I don't think anyone in the world could tolerate it. And in terms of Balochistan, I think they will continue fighting, no matter who is supporting who. And sadly, those have power, those have interest in the region, including the US. They are doing nothing. They are silent, and their silence is also going against them.
Yeah. So just being mindful of time, and I know like for so much of Balochistan, there's so much deeper we can get onto the environmental aspects, the role of like US, China, and all that. I kind of want to cover just like covering two of the like regional actors in South within the Balochistan context that play a role in getting your thoughts on it. Because of course, there's Iran, as you mentioned. Iran does control part of Balochistan, and I believe, forgetting if it was last year or this year, just because of how crazy things have been in the region, that Iran sent missiles into Balochistan and Pakistan, which led to Pakistan to retaliate by bombing Sistan and Balochistan. So like kind of covering a little bit maybe on the Iran aspect, but also like just to be like fully transparent, I am someone of Indian descent. And especially in South Asia, when we talk about Balochistan and like the larger public discourse, a lot of it has to do with like, well, India, especially the right-wing Hindu nationalist movement, are very big cheerleaders of the Balochistan movement. And I would say like they're not really interested in the people. They're just doing it because they want to hurt Pakistan for what Pakistan does to Kashmir, while India itself is like committing all these atrocities in Kashmir. So especially as someone, and I know like it's very popular in our region, if you're a Kashmiri from Indian occupied Kashmir speaking for human rights, you're a Pakistani agent. And Balochistan, if you speak about human rights, you're an Indian agent. So especially when you have these like role of Iran and India, how do you as like a Baloch activist or even the Baloch movement needs to like navigate these like difficult regional actors?
Because in terms of Iran is also in many Baloch community, many people consider it also like an invader or occupier of their land. And of course, what the facts shows that Baloch people has been brutalized extremely, and they are not allowed to even have their cultural names for their kids. And on top of that, Iran is also using religion and in Iran it's Shiaism, and in Pakistan it's so-called Sunnism, the violent Sunnism, and it's not religion itself is not there's nothing to point on the religion or those like a religious scholars, but the Pakistani state using it for of course people, because as I was saying, Punjab is just a one biggest populace, and then they don't have anything to unify the entire other regions, only the religion. They're misusing it. But yet Iran is also there are also some movements against the Iranian state going on, and Balochistan in so-called, there's some terms like Western and Eastern Balochistan. Like Eastern Balochistan is where I'm from, and the Western is Iranian Balochistan, and they of course have a good connection. Of course, it's like a family relationships. When you go to the so-called created borders, people live both sides, like families live both sides of the border, particularly in Makran region, and so there's always debate between the Baloch parties and armed and political. Like we should support what is happening in Western Balochistan, and some people, of course, there's always politics going on within the Baloch people, but it's still yes. And in terms of India, of course, India is kind of emerging great power, and Iran has a historical rivalry with Pakistan. Of course, it started when British was there, and so since then, of course, again. The problem, the root of the cause is the land of Kashmir, and of course is the land of Balochistan, is the land of other marginalized communities. They've been living there for years, but those relationship to the land has always been manipulated and always been denied to the people in terms of Kashmir, in the name of religion, again used by Pakistan. And also on the other side used by Indian religious or like Hindu nationalists. And it's true, they always try to, Pakistan try to create some challenges for India and try to make people to work for them. And of course, India also do that. But I don't think that there's a state level policy or there's a significant thought about, we need to support Balochistan to get free from Pakistan, or other side Pakistan, so we need to support Kashmiris living under Indian suppression to be free from the suppression. They have their own sovereignty. But when we see other side of Kashmir, where the Pakistani government rule, Pakistani state rules, they're suffering worse, and they're being abducted and killed. They have no right to say that they don't have say to their own livelihood. And but Balochistan is, if there was I don't think India is going to support a Baloch movement clearly or in a significant way that make a change or make a difference. And if there was anything like this, I think Balochistan's movement right now would be a different movement and a different state. Baloch movement, I cannot say that there was no individual connections. It might be, because it's a region, it's a war, it is a war for independence, it's a war for control, it's a war for hegemony, it is a rivalry exists there between India and Pakistan and India and China. It's happening everywhere in the world. It happened in the history, particularly during big powers competition and the suffrage people's struggle for freedom. And that might happen, but it might be individual, but there's no systematic state level or like a big party level support for Baloch people. And I believe in the youngest leadership and youngest activists in Balochistan current movement, I think they're more into human rights. They're more into defending land. They're more into supporting suffrage people. And we know, particularly myself, I believe there's no chance for any marginalized community in the region without their having their sovereign status, and they live on their land, their own, and then they do whatever with other lands. Kashmir, Gilgit-Balochistan, Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan, and also on Iran side, the Kurdish region and Baloch region. But of course, Baloch has been living together. It doesn't mean that Balochistan should be a one state. And there are many ethnic groups or like cultural groups. They have live in different states, but they have their own sovereignty. And this is the not only even India is trying to be a great power or control. India cannot do it if there's a conflict, there's a separation and war in Indian Punjab or in Kashmir, in other states. India also should. I'm not asking any extreme government or something in terms of, because India is a state in the region, powerful state in the region. If Baloch is going to have a state in the region, then they will have a relationship with India. They will have if Iran do not suppress their people, they will have a relationship with Iran, and of course Iran will exist and Afghanistan will exist, and but for that power, Indian policymakers should be serious and not suppressing the people, respecting the sovereignty of the regions they have. And also, of course, Pakistan, as I was saying, they can use anything because they have no claim or like sovereign claim or sovereign title to Balochistan, sovereign title to Kashmir, sovereign title to. So, yeah, this is an unfortunate thing. It creates lots of challenges, and still people. The thing is, the information is restricted. Reporting is restricted, and people don't know. And whatever now, of course, social media is there, but before, like from textbooks to television to radio to newspaper controlled by the states, particularly in Pakistan, even so-called liberals or like a progressive and critical writers, they also mostly 90% cover state narrative. So that's the big thing, and it's challenging for the region's people. They do this. Pakistan does its work, and India does its work, but it suffered Baloch people, Pashtun people, Kashmiri people, and region suffers people. Unfortunately, during this entire rivalry, the most impacted victims were religious minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Religious minority, Christians, Hindus, Ahmadis, and other religious minorities. Because to feed their sectarian terrorists, they had to brutally kill these people to show, they're fighting for a right cause. It's just a feeding tactics to those extremists to sharpen their brutalities. And can you imagine it? As I was saying before, the Western or international community's role, they said, every statement you can see or you can read, they say they're promoting religious minority rights and diversity. But in a state, its constitution declare a religious minority, non-Muslim, have no right to exist. And if you don't have this thought, you don't believe in these things. If you are you live in Pakistan, no matter you are occupied or you are in Punjab, if you want to get a passport, you have to accept this, that yes, Ahmadis are not Muslim. At that level, separation of these minorities, and it's heartbreaking for us. Is because I saw a lot as an ethnic group, as activists, as my people suffering, but still we have a claim, we have a fighting. But for those communities, there is no significant even movement, even pressure on Pakistan to stop it.
The thing is that ultimately, I'm hoping something even if this podcast is not massive, but it has an okay following, that there is an element to be, there's something to be said about the fact that it's not as well known as it should be as a we said it's complex, but ultimately the fundamentals are not that difficult to understand. When you were talking about, for example, the situation in Iran specifically, I thought a lot also about Kurds, because even in terms of like not being allowed to use their own names and stuff like that, is something that's more well known, I think, outside of Iran because of the murder and death of Jinnah, also known as Mahsa. Hence, again, the two names, of course, because Kurds are not allowed to keep their own names in the same way. But I'm just mindful of a bit of time. It's impossible to go through everything because that's just how it is. But I wanted to ask you if it's possible, like if there's anything at least major enough that we didn't get into that you wanted to talk about, or if there's something that you wanted to share before we slowly wrap up. And I will say to our listeners that we will include as many links as possible in the description for folks who also do their own research, inform themselves more, because in this sort of lack of information, or at least not as much information as this situation deserves, the worst actors clearly are the ones that benefit, as you know, you've been explaining pretty well. So yeah, just leaving you the floor, and Hari, you can take over after that if you want.
I also want to touch into the social aspect of this conflict and the financial or economic aspect of this conflict, because this is one of the root causes of what is happening in Balochistan. Is one of the root causes of Pakistan's brutalities against Baloch people, and particularly because as the world people know, like Balochistan is a rich, resource-rich land with a strategic geopolitical importance, and that's true. But they don't know like how this resource richness is enforcing the brutalities Pakistan military commit against Balochistan's people, and also because now it's not only dignity, it's not only safety and security, it is also the livelihood of Balochistan's people, and health, education, because the world is changing now. The world is the same international community coming to our land to extract our resources, thinking to make stronger, bigger, armed to be hegemonic power and go to the space, making other living. But we still don't have eating. We still don't have food. We are far behind. We're living in the 19th century. And how we can compete with this world, how we can be creative, because we're suffering, and also livelihood. Like Balochistan's entire population rely on, like more than 70% population rely on agriculture, like small farmers, lands, and there's no market for them. There's drying, there's a climate change impacts, and there's also mining impacts, pollutions, and only 45% of Balochistan's populations have drinking water, clean drinking water, and also they rely on groundwater, surface water, rainwaters, and river waters, and they've been polluted. There are like 9, like in winter, like it's in Balochistan in Las Bela, more than 60% water is not safe for drinking because of these industries, and Katani and Akchoki, they have CD. I don't know, guys. It's called cadmium something. It's like if you eat those water, if they have CDs, high CDs, then lose your livers. You could have heart attack. These kind of things. And also in Muslim Bagh in Balochistan, with Pakistan, Balochistan has famous for different regions famous for different minerals. Like that area is famous for coal mining, and it was not allowed to independent reporting and lab testing. But there were some organizations, some individuals they found chemical in people's blood, and you can imagine how it would be, how the life would be there, and also if the land is drying, water is going down, and one of the reason of drought, and particularly agriculture based, like on groundwater, like well water, and drinking water, mostly people rely on well water. And these minings dig 100,000 feet deeper than the people do it with hand to get out water to drink. And it's going down, and there's no talk about it. There's no protection policies. And they are doing, again, one example I want to give, it's like one region. You can imagine how bad Balochistan's being governed, how corrupt, how brutal, how unmonitored, like without any check and balance from the state institution, particularly from the international community and organization. Chagi district, in terms of land, largest districts in Balochistan, the largest district in Balochistan, particularly is considered when you ask any other Pakistani, this is the largest district in Pakistan's administrative. But its people still rely on like primary basic income, like cutting wood, doing some smuggling of Iranian diesel or some other like human trafficking. Some of people are involved because they're forced to do it. There's no other. But the region right now, there are like 102 mining operations going on in one district, and the 36 mines are already closed. And the two competing world power are competing in the same district, US and China. China has been exploiting Sendak. Sendak is an area, in Baloch is called Sendak. They manipulate, the name is called Sendak. And since 2001, Chinese companies are doing there. And then the recording. And other Pakistani state-owned or federally from Punjab or Islamabad companies going there. And local people are not allowed to even go too close to them. The militarization is heavily increasing. And people are protesting on the roads saying that these companies hiring foreigners. And local don't have clean drinking water. Chagi is one of the driest district in Balochistan, affected brutally, and water is the scarce thing in that region. There are some level of water, these companies sucking it out. And so even better golds, they're the mining. They built, like we say about China is fencing Gwadar, but they're fencing like 100-kilometer region to control it from anyone coming from outside to fence whatever their operation they are doing there. So can you imagine like how rich Balochistan is? Like in one district, they're like every natural, like there were like, I believe 29 minerals discovered in that district. Now recently they discovered gas and gold, silver, copper, chromite, marble. And the environment is already dry, and they're dumping everything there. There's no there's no check and balance. In terms of Pakistan's so-called constitution, provinces should get 37% of profits, whatever they do there. But the Sendak, government's its own audit reports of 2023 shows that Sendak didn't pay the profits for the last 10 years. The estimated amount, of course, is still not the clear one. It's not the correct one because it's still doing it. And there's no record of like millions, like hundreds of millions of Pakistani rupee in this project. So this is the most suppressing thing for the region. For me, I'm scared because if people don't have to eat, people don't have security, people are already being harassed and forced, what they do? Because they do something for their survival. And the other side, the state is already militarizing Balochistan, using it, or saying that they're against development. But the world powers also contributing to that. And of course, if Barragold is lying, they say, they hired a private security company to guard. It's impossible for any private security company to protect such a big project in Balochistan, particularly. Also in other regions, but particularly in Balochistan. They're just showing the documents to the world, particularly to the community and So they're saying they hired like there's a car one. So this is, but if you hire the Pakistan military, you're going to pay for it. You are paying the militarization. Barrack Gold is paying the militarization. Chinese regime is going to is paying the militarization of Balochistan. The same military. It should not. International laws, in business law, business and human rights principles don't allow any company to hire a military. They're involved in human rights crimes against human rights. They are using FC. I was saying before, like last month report of the Human Rights Council of Balochistan released last July, like July 24, 2024 report. Like most of the abductions and killing carried out by the Pakistani, the paramilitary, like FC. And the same FC is hired to protect the Chinese and Canadian projects there. So it's just one. There's more details about the same small land. I'm writing something, creating, coming up with the detailed report probably soon. That how a small, like a one district, is militarized. It is involving two great powers. They're fighting for hegemony, like security hegemony, economic hegemony, and mineral hegemony in the in the globe. So, but still, no one talks about that. And same, even Chinese don't care about these things. Chinese company, Chinese state, they don't say anything. They just don't care. They say nothing's happening. Whatever doing Pakistan, but the sad thing inside when Western companies comes, they try to show it is a legal thing. They try to force the Pakistani government come up with new laws, new protection principles for the acts or principles for the foreign investors, and then they show, oh, it's not us, it's Pakistan's law. And the same CEO, can you imagine the seriousness of this word and Balochistan suffering? Barrack Gold CEO Mark Bristow was a former member of the apartheid regime in South Africa. And he openly says that African people are lazy. They don't work. They're inferior. He said the same for Balochistan's people. They said they're like intellectually curved and they cannot understand things. It's on record. And he killed lots of endangered animals. But he's still the head of the second biggest large extracted, like mineral exploited, what's called mining company, Barrack Gold. And it's a Canadian. Of course, Canada is a headquarter for the more than 60% of international mining companies. But the benefits going to the entire democratic world, particularly to the US competition against China. So, but still nothing is being done. The sad thing is that they still think, and you cannot also find any report in their. Even I wrote many things, I sent it to Canadian media, US media. No one replied to that, and with the facts, with the documentation, with everything. And they know when I talk to personally, they say like it's horrible. But you cannot see anything. And then I feel sometimes they think the regional people, the victims, are still stupid. Whatever they say in media or something, they can believe it in the word of believe it. So it's not going to work that way. It's creating further challenges.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And I know there's a lot more we can be talking about Balochistan. Hopefully, for Balochistan and especially many marginalized places in South Asia, because there's unfortunately almost every single major state in South Asia is united in the fact that they have like their own territories that they like to exploit, and marginalized people that try to push off the land. So hopefully this is the first of many conversations, especially with the kind of the goal of this podcast and the collective that is part of, to help promote help people understand other parts of the world, the commonalities and the similar sufferings and solidarities that could arise from that. And folks, as you said, not focusing on what the elites say or what they say, but what the people say, and creating people power. I guess that's maybe that's my way of like trying to sum up Elia. So, but yeah, thank you, Lateef, Johar, Baloch for joining us today. And I'll leave for Elia to say.
Yeah, just that. No, repeating what Harry said, really. Thanks a lot, Johar, for doing this. As I'll repeat one more time, we'll include all of this in as many information as we can, as many links as we can in the show notes. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to clear one thing, because whatever I say about ethnic group or like a personal individual, I'm not mean any individual or like an ordinary group. Yeah. It's about the state and the elite and those people in power, and those make the policies, those exploit the regions. And it's hurtful for me because it's not only Balochistan. I can see it's happening everywhere. The problem is that the state is so brutal and people are not coming together. Individually, everyone is suffering. Everyone, my family is suffering. Someone else's family is suffering. My friends are suffering. My community are suffering. So, but collective, this is the policy of the state to not let any collective uprising. And now it's uprising happening in Balochistan and somehow in Pashtun. That's why my request to them, every marginalized community in the region, to do something, because doing something, I'm not saying to be violent, not saying peaceful, right? You're peaceful, you're more powerful, you're more gathered, you're more accepted. And it's your right. Stand up for your right together. If Balochistan is doing right now, if Sindhi ordinary people in Sindh, they started, and also Gilgit-Baltistan's people do it, I think Pakistani government or military cannot control millions of people, and the world cannot close their eyes. And everyone knows, the world knows that they only been dealing the entire region with Punjabi. I'm saying Punjabi because, of course, they're controlled by Punjabi elites and military. Everything they decide about Balochistan, Pakhtunkhwa, or other regions, they sit with those people. They have no right. They have no natural right. They have no constitutional right. They have no legal rights. And it's our right to say no to them, because no one from Punjab or from US, from China is allowed to come in Balochistan and steal our resources and kill our people without asking us. Everyone support this cause. Everyone, it's a humanitarian, universal thing. Unfortunately, the West misuse the principles of human rights and people, but no one want to be abducted, killed, and tortured and suffer from hunger and die from a small disease. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And let me know if you guys want any reference from what I said. So I will send you the link.
Absolutely. Send us everything you can. And we'll, as I said, we'll include all of this in the show notes and on the website as well for our listeners. Both of you, Hari as well, thanks for doing this. I know it was your first time guest hosting. I don't know. I hope it was okay. You were great as far as I'm concerned. And Johar as well. Thanks again a lot for going on. I'm sure we'll have you on again because it kind of feels like this was like the introduction more than anything to a topic that deserves, or situation, whatever, a struggle, I would say, that deserves more in-depth exploration than what we were able to do here. But hopefully it was a good enough primer for our listeners. Yeah. Thanks a lot, both of you.
Thank you so much.
This has been another episode of the Fire These Times. If you like this podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star rating or review on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. And if you really like this podcast, head on to patreon.com/firethesetimes. That's patreon.com/firethesetimes. The Fire These Times is a media ecosystem based in the Periphery that supports a bunch of media projects, including this one. For $5 a month, and even less if you opt for the yearly subscription, you can help this ecosystem grow and get early access to all episodes of the Fire These Times, Politically Depressed, Obscuristan, and Khida, as well as an invitation to join our monthly hangout, watch parties, upcoming book club, as well as exclusive episodes. Thank you for listening, and take care, everyone.